fight, right? And that's the problem a lot of people have. Welcome back to Truth Hurts, where we expose corrupt politicians and lying corporate media. I'm Jake Duesenberg, your host. We're broadcasting live from Roseville, Minnesota, in the belly of the beast, the liberal zombie apocalypse of Minneapolis and St. Paul. Joining me, reading your comments at home, is Mr. Liberty Longwind, Paul Tucci. How you doing there, buddy?
I'm doing good. I got some wings here from Quinny's Pub and Grill in Montemita, so when I have wings from Quinny's, I'm always doing well. But I never understand how I'm reading the comments at home. Is this my home? It's like the same.
No,
as
reading
home.
Their comments from home. You're reading them from
they're
here.
They're at home.
There
Well, what if they're watching from work?
Okay, what? Oh my God, really? That's the distinction we're going to make here. By the way, Nathan, our guest today, running for judge. You live in Montemita. Are you familiar with this great establishment, Quinny's?
I am familiar with Quinny's, and it used to be a place called Jethro's.
Yes, Jethro's Char Grill or something like that.
Char Grill, and then it was Quinny's. But Quinny's is very good. We still go there.
Yeah, it's run by a real patriot, Janice Quinlan, a good friend of mine. We're going to be talking to Nathan Hansen, who's running for judge, 10th Judicial District in Minnesota. Then we'll bring in Representative Mike Wiener on, who wants to talk a little bit about the HRC covered on Thursday last week with Tucci and Jesse. Then the Dems get a constitutional conservative on the ballot in Congressional District 2, and we know all about how this thing all happened, including who the donors are that made this work, and they're not constitutional conservative donors, that's for sure, and they're not poor people. They are very wealthy Democrats who give to Democrat causes. So this is an interesting story. And then last thing is Facebook actually shut down our ad account. We just started this new ad account. We're running an ad. We put a Trump story. I don't want to say it's a pro-Trump story. It's just a story on our view where we think Trump is in this race, which is a little counter to what the rest of the mainstream media says. And just like that, taken off Facebook. Our ad account shut down. We can't advertise because misleading business practices, which I'm guessing that's not the real reason. So we'll get into that story as well. If you want to be part of our show, you can put a comment there in the Rumble rant or in the on Rumble. And if you want to interrupt at the same time, hit that Rumble rant, and we'll read your comment live. We're brought to you by Alpine Cabinetry in St. Cloud and my good friend, Warren Wessel of Keller Williams Realty. I was like, did I screw that up? Keller Williams Realty. You can call Warren at 612-419-7453. If you're looking for a home, if you want to buy a home, if you're selling a home, give my good friend Warren a call. Nathan Hansen, let's start with you here. You are... I think, very openly in favor of liberty when it comes to COVID lockdowns, vaccine mandates, stuff like that. I know I followed a lot of your tweets. You were really out there, open about that stuff. Do you stand a chance on becoming a judge in Minnesota? It seems like you'd be a very rare breed if you got elected.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. These are great studios here. I'm really impressed by it, and it's nice to be on your show. When you're running for judge, you're not supposed to say how you'd rule on anything like that, but I absolutely have a history of that stuff and activism and views. I share those views, and I think that you have a right to have those views here in Minnesota, actually thanks to a Supreme Court case here in Minnesota from 2002, where you could, have some political views about things when you're running for a judge, because there's some specific rules that apply to people who are running for judge. And I do think I have a chance, and I could probably elaborate on that some.
How explain to the viewers at home, how wrong did the courts get COVID? Because I know you were an attorney for, I know, Larvita at one point. You were privy to a couple other cases. I didn't find, even the one that made it the furthest, which ended up getting argued in front of the Supreme Court. I'm trying to think. I think it was a Cross-Castle case about the mask mandate. I can't think of a victory in the Minnesota courts during COVID. Meanwhile, you're an East Sider like myself. You just go across the border in Wisconsin, and it was early on. The Supreme Court of Wisconsin rejected Evers' mandates, rejected his emergency powers to shut down businesses, and they did it completely different.
One thing I've said for many years to people on discussing these topics generally, and I have to be careful because I'm running for judge now about who's wrong and what, so I can talk about the law and how it fits together. But I always say there's a reason that the words law and politics are strung together. because there really ends up being, I think, as a practical matter, an intersection between these things. You get decisions that, I mean, I think when you reach up to the Supreme Court level, to some extent, many would argue that you have people that are nakedly political. You have national candidates saying, "Well, I'm going to appoint people that have a specific view on various issues." But with regard to here and politics and the intersection of politics, I represented, as you mentioned, Larvita McFarquhar, who kept her restaurant open, Haven's Garden, in western Minnesota in the Marshall area. Now, she was sued by Jan Malcolm in a civil matter for keeping them open, sued for injunction to stop her from doing it. Well, while she had her restaurant open, all of the restaurants, the administration, the Walz administration is running the state, kept the restaurants open on Indian reservations. Now, a lot of people say, as a threshold matter, that these people, they have the full right to do what they want. Well, there's a limit to that. There's a law from the 30s. It's in Section 25 of the U.S. Code. I think it's 25 U.S.C. 231. And then there is the Minnesota statute under Section 13 that specifically contemplates the governor taking actions for health, education, welfare on Indian reservations.
If the science is good enough amongst the population, why would you segment a certain part of the population? I guess would be the argument.
Yeah,
right?
well, not only that, it's not like the Indian tribes were like, "All right, we're locking down the reservation. Nobody's coming on here. Nobody's leaving."
They're like reaping the benefits.
They're
here.
like, well, now we're the only people open.
Yeah.
People can come here like crazy.
It's ridiculous.
And they were packed. So as part of my exhibit, some of my followers on Twitter, I'm at Nathan M. Hansen with an EN. Some of my followers on Twitter, I outsourced them to go to the various reservations and sign affidavits, take pictures to show that they were open. And the point is there was no reason from our perspective to treat from the science or legally to treat those Indian reservations differently Indian reservations differently from any other restaurant located within the boundaries of Minnesota, assuming for the sake of argument that there is this virus and it's killing everybody, to have the reservation open and have people do that. And so we lost at the trial court level on this.
Can I ask real quick?
Oh, go ahead.
I don't even know how this works, but does the Department of Health still overlook the restaurants on tribal land? Do they have any jurisdiction normally?
I think that they do. I think
because that was essentially the vehicle they used to go after these people.
Yeah, I think that they do. I think that they would have the people there. But even so, even if I think in the areas they do, and I think that they would argue from their perspective, they're like, well, that's voluntary, and we just want to have that there.
Yeah.
But I think if you went into these, that's a good question. I mean, our position was they certainly had the power to do it, and then we took it up on appeal. Their argument. The Court of Appeals said, the Minnesota Court of Appeals said, well, that there's a rational basis to treat them differently so the tribes can run their own stuff under this. Well, they were keeping the restaurants open and inviting everybody in. So really that ended up being, a lot of people would argue if you looked at that was a political,
But isn't the science still going to work? Like if they can go to a fully open restaurant on a tribal land, which we were talking about, like what is the difference between tribal land? It's just like you go down the road, there is the casino, right?
They were practicing,
and it's like then they go back and spread it. Yeah. So are you really in this business?
I guess the science. A friend of mine went to a casino. It was a very, very, very entertaining story. A friend of mine went to a casino during COVID, and the science that they were following at this casino said you had to wear a mask unless you were smoking. So people, if they were playing cards, they chain smoked all the time. So my buddy was playing some roulette, and he was drinking quite a bit of alcohol, health. So when he gets a little alcohol in him, he gets a little belligerent. So he's playing roulette, worst odds in the house, and he's playing with these $25 chips, and he's winning, and he's got all these chips. Well, he's smoking, and the lady says, you got to take a drag of your cigarette, then put your mask up. And he says, no, I'll take a drag and then exhale and put my mask up, being that he was like chain smoking, that he would never have to wear it. Mm-hmm. So they got into an argument. She said, okay, you're done. So he's trying to put all of his chips into his shirt pocket, and they wouldn't fit. So he stacked them all up on one number, and it hit, and he won $27,600, and then he had to leave. So that was the science.
Winner, chicken dinner. Go ahead. We got a Rumble rant.
Rumble Rant says, too bad Gazelka and the Republican Senate didn't fire Jan, but protected her because she's friends with Michelle Benson. Apparently, Republicans are okay killing their constituents to save their positions.
It is interesting. It's like Jan, as you just said, is Jan Malcolm is the one that's going after all these things. And then we talked about this at the end of the program. Paul Gazelka, who never had any courage when he was a Senate Majority Leader, but all of a sudden acts like he was a courageous guy standing up against walls. Not true at all. And it's like, never did you fire Jan Malcolm, the person that's suing. I know it's Keith Ellison as the AG representing the body, in court, but he's representing the Department of Health. It's Jan Malcolm doing the, basically trying to destroy these people's lives. In the case of Lisa Sarza, drove her out of the state, unfortunately. I think she's picked herself up and operating a great bar in Wisconsin now. She can't even do business in Minnesota. Larvita's always going to be fine. I like Larvita. She's always going to figure things out. But, destroying the lives of these people. So, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your argument. It was such an interesting case. You were the only one that took it from that angle.
From a defensive angle, yeah. We were the only case that got discovery. So they listed in their petition a guy named Richard Danila as a fact witness. And we were able to, because they didn't win as a summary disposition initially, we were able to take the deposition of Richard Danila. And his deposition was taken for over 7 hours. The transcript is generally publicly available. And Richard Danila didn't really have any explanation as to what the difference was between the science with Indian reservations versus other restaurants was. There was certainly, at least if you were to read those depositions, I don't think that a reasonable person would glean from them that there was any scientific distinction between the spread of a virus on an Indian reservation versus the spread of a virus off of an Indian reservation.
Well, there's political science, obviously. That's the science that existed. Dawson, pull up the A2. I want to bring up the Minnesota Constitution. We rarely have a lawyer, a legal scholar on the show. You're running for judge. I think it's fair to ask judges to know the Minnesota Constitution. I think that's fair.
Not how I would rule on a thing, but we'll see. Well,
I'm not asking you how I'm ruling on a thing here. Article 3, this is Article 3 of the Minnesota Constitution, Division of Powers. And it says the powers of government shall be divided into 3 distinct departments, legislative, executive, and judicial. No person or persons belonging to or constituting one of these departments shall exercise any of the powers properly belonging to either of the others except in the instances expressly provided in this Constitution. You know what's not in the Constitution? Emergency powers. How on earth did these guys get away with this when it's just so clear they can't exercise, the governor cannot clearly make law?
I think that they were. I think that their argument is that it would fall under their generalized police powers that are inherent in them, that given to the states. Not specifically designated them by the Constitution. But there was a statute dealing with emergencies.
Yeah.
It's just that there were all these extra things that were added on by executive order that weren't really in there.
But
and I think their argument was these were derivative of that power in that Section 13 of the statutes.
Even if there's a statute, there is an idea, at least U.S. Constitution, the Supremacy Clause, but certainly this ideal in the constitutional law that all laws are inferior to the Constitution, and therefore, if they're contradictory, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And so, sure, there's Chapter 12 laws on emergency powers, but that doesn't supersede the Minnesota Constitution. I think a lot of people would probably be curious, are you a strict constitutionalist? Is that how you would act as a judge?
Well, I would say generally I try to read the text of things right as they are. I think it would be fair to say I would lean that way. A lot of my area of practice in bankruptcy is in bankruptcy. And a lot of the bankruptcy lawyers would be considered more to the left and Democrats and stuff. But there's a dissent in a case about the application of the means test, which is something that becomes real important in bankruptcy court. And it was a dissent written by Antonin Scalia. And it's very pro-debtor. And he was the dissenting voice. And that arose from his very strict reading of the statute. And that's kind of how I am about it. I think that I agree with Scalia, and ironically, I think a lot of my Democratic friends, or people might have different political views than me who practice the bankruptcy area, like the Scalia dissent in that case. And I do. I mean, I generally think that if you're writing big, huge, long things about very narrow subjects, that are you losing the plot here? Do you not see the forest from the trees?
Right.
And so I would say generally I try to apply the Constitution and individual rights and respect people's individual rights. I think that the government's very powerful, and you have to be. And I think as a judge, you have to be. Your job isn't to work in lockstep with other parts of the government. Your job is to be a check and an independent check on the other parts of the government, a co-equal branch of government. And so I think that you need to be skeptical about the powers that the government uses, because they're huge powers.
Right.
I say to people, the end of any legal proceeding, whether it be criminal or civil, if you go all the way down it, is men with guns and prisons or jails. Every single one of them, that's the end of anything if it goes to its logical conclusion, if you're not complying with stuff. And I think when you're talking about that and you're talking about deprivation of liberty, you need to be very skeptical and you need to be very careful about how you apply things and not invent things. I think you need to read the law what it is. And I think even laws I don't disagree with, they have to be applied if they're constitutional but read carefully.
Yeah, I love how you say that. I think if we are being honest about the true threat to democracy, as they say, threat to our republic, is the fact that we have a media and a bunch of judges, I mean probably the majority of judges, who don't take the viewpoint of being skeptical of those in power. They tend to actually be proponents of those in power. We often call them robed gangsters around here because they're really not here standing as a neutral party, at least, nor maybe if you're to have a bias, it's a bias towards liberty and individual rights. They tend to be just proponents of the state. And that's a huge problem. If we're being honest, the threat to democracy, if there's no check and balance on what the powers are doing, then do we really have a form of government that we thought we had?
I think that it's an abstract concept that's difficult to apply in practice, because you think,
sure,
in some ways the judges are getting this nice paycheck and benefits from the government, and sometimes maybe some of them feel like they work for the government too, and maybe they don't take the 30,000-foot view all the time that they should. That I have a specific role here, even though I'm getting my paycheck from the same place, and they don't even really. Because really, that whether you are the smallest pauper of a person, or the mighty government, or a mighty corporation, in every aspect, you need to be given a fair shake in our legal system. I practice a lot in bankruptcy court right now, and at least with our judges here, the nice thing in bankruptcy court, and these are picked a different way, they're appointed by the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals. In my many years, over a decade of litigating in bankruptcy court, and I don't always win or anything like that, but the judges there, and maybe it's because smaller dockets and the docket runs better, whether you are a debtor, a poor person filing bankruptcy, or you are the IRS, or you are a major creditor, or you are the United States government in some other capacity, everybody is given a fair shake there. You're listened to, you're treated with respect. We have very fine judges. They're very smart judges. Like I said, I don't always win there. But this idea that you really need to think carefully about that concept, that whether you're a party, no matter who you are, you really need to be. And there's a lot of aspects to it that I think escape some judges with things. I saw something the other day where it wasn't something I was directly involved in, only tangentially. And I thought, if these parties weren't individuals and they were a bank, this judge probably would have ruled differently, just because that was a bank. It was in state court. And they would have thought, you could on this particular issue. And I really believe that. I mean, I don't have any proof of that, but I mean, I read this decision and I thought, if this was a bank versus two individuals, because it was a type of instrument that would involve a bank, might involve a bank or a large institution, they would have ruled differently. They got that ruling because it was two individuals, and it really shouldn't be that way.
Right. Have you ever said to someone, you got to show up to bankruptcy court this morning, and they go, ooh?
No,
I feel like most people say that. I don't know why that hit me, but it's like, most people say that, I'd be like, whoa, what's going on? You're going bankrupt?
I do it all the time.
That's your job.
I've been doing it for so long, and the judges are great, and the bar, the other attorneys are, for the most part, highly skilled, very respectful, good lawyers. There's a lot more of we're really going to narrow down the issue here. I've seen it in state court. You can get a lot of satellite litigation about other stuff that isn't necessarily, it's tangentially involved to the topic at hand, and somebody's trying to use discovery stuff to gain an advantage over somebody. I don't like that practice when people do that. I think that attorneys, as professionals, need to cooperate together. It is an adversary process. Things can get tense. It is hard to digest that you fight with people every day, but you have to be collegial with them. Mm-hmm. But you figure it out over time, because it makes each of your lives easier, and it also serves your respective clients better, because you're getting right down to the heart of the issue. And I think that's a good lesson.
Have you seen the show on HBO that just came out, Chimp Crazy, yet?
No.
Oh, shoot. Okay, that's my next 8 questions for you.
Well, I have no
Have
idea.
you seen it?
I have not either. I don't even know what that is.
Oh, my God. I just got into it, and I'll just put it this way. As a lawyer, a guy that's aspiring to be a judge, I think it's by episode 3. It's very fascinating for you guys. Because, by the way, they're trying to paint PETA as like the heroes in it, and that really goes against my inclinations. But there's also a crazy chimpanzee woman, and she's defying the court. It's fascinating stuff. All kidding
what's
aside,
it called again?
It's about it's the same people that created Tiger King.
Oh, okay.
So it's about people that have chimpanzees in America. Huh. I mean, these directors really seem to have found their niche, and that's people with exotic
Now, I might have a handful of questions, but I have been trying to promote the candidacy to friends in, was it Kennebec, Pine, Washington, Anoka, Isanti, Chisago. There's 2 more, and Wright
Sherburne
and
and Wright.
Yeah, counties, and got a lot of friends in those counties, and I'm saying, vote for Nathan, and they say, oh, well, cool. What does the district judge do? What kind of cases they get? Some people are concerned with crime in their area. Some people are concerned with election stuff. Some people, some people want less punishment for victimless criminals. Other people want more punishment for violent criminals. People are concerned about election stuff. And is this something that he'll be able to rule on when he's a judge? And I said, frankly, I don't know. So let me start with that.
Well, what does a judge do? So first of all, the rules, some part of the rules of running for judge, you can't say how you'd rule on any particular thing. And you also can't support or oppose any other candidate except for yourself and the person that you're running against. But as a general proposition, if the question is, what does a state district court judge do in Minnesota? Well, they preside over all manner of types of cases that can come along. Divorce cases, order for protection cases, contract cases, cases involving real estate and titles to real estate. Trying to think of course, criminal cases. That's the most common one that a lot of people think of. That would be anything from petty misdemeanors up to felonies. I think that would include and then any kind of lots of obscure civil matters, that can come up, quiet title actions and declaratory judgment actions and other types of obscure things that can come up before a district court judge.
Gotcha. And so 10th district is a pretty large size district, I guess, in regards to amount of people.
Let me go through the counties. I think it's about 675,000 total voters.
Sounds like it.
But it's Washington, Anoka, Pine, Isanti, Chisago, Kennebec, Sherburne, and Wright. So it is a vast district. I mean, I think from my house, if you drove from the southern end of Washington County up to the western end of Wright County or up to St. Cloud or Sherburne, you'd be talking well over 2 hours.
Yeah.
If you were driving.
Dawson, pull up the A1. Let's go do Hansen for Judge, Hansen, the number 4 judge.com. This is your website. Look at that good looking dude up there. And look at that. Look at what he did with the T. Put a gavel in there. Clever graphic artist. That was his logo up on the top there. Yeah.
Top, yeah.
All right, scroll down here, and he puts bar admissions and then education. And in his education, he writes, member of the Gun Owners of America.
Which is
I love it.
Ron Paul says the only real deal gun lobby organization.
Yeah, I mean, they are more hard in the paint than, obviously the NRA, which is a big compromise.
And then I went to St. Petersburg Junior College, the same junior college that Jim Morrison attended.
Yeah, we don't care about any of that. we care about the fact you just, like, even if you just said member of the Oakdale Gun Club, I mean, you know how that club goes. Some of the guys don't even shoot. Some of the guys can't even see anymore, right? That's a very aging gun club, I'll put it that way.
I like to go to the volunteer and be the range officers.
Well, you have to.
Yeah, I know you have to.
That's why I left that. That's a much closer gun club than the one I belong to. But I was like, 2 days? I got to give 2 days.
And I thought we were all there. I did it the first time, and there was like 25 guys there. One guy owned some prominent local business. I saw him there. And then, all these guys are professionals and stuff. And, we're there for 8 hours a day. There's like 25 of us. I'm a lawyer. And then I'm like, well, what's at the end of the day? We all get together. And I'm like, well, what was the take for today having an open? And they're like, we made $800. And I thought, oh, jeez. Really?
Well, they got to be making a killing, though, on the weekends before the guns.
That's when it was. That's when we took in $800. 20.
That's it? I mean, they make
20 middle-aged and older guys working there.
Yeah, the free labor works very well. No, that's that gun club is just. Do you ever provide counsel or anything like that? That gun club's so interesting because one stray bullet gets out and
they've got it pretty well set up there.
Yeah, they do. They have hundreds of thousands of dollars invested in making sure one bullet, because you can literally hike right behind that in the park reserve. I've done it a gazillion times.
They're building a school nearby it. I think there's some concern about that.
Yeah, I mean, of course, because they just proved the bond in Stillwater, and well, that's a whole show in and of itself. But yeah, they're likely to build a school around there, which is good. We're so crazy these days. The old adage that people used to bring their firearms to school. It's like nowadays it's just this stigma behind. Well, I don't know what it is. I can't put my head around what the actual issue is, but certainly we're not as healthy of a nation as we were 50 years ago.
I think exposure and learning about, at least with my children, safe gun practices saves lives.
Oh, 100%.
If you look at the prosecution of who's that actor, he's pointing a gun at somebody.
Alec Baldwin.
Yeah, Alec Baldwin. I mean, if you had like the background that I've taught my children, which is I don't care if you think it's unloaded or whatever it is. You never do anything like that. You never, ever, ever do anything like that. Even if you are in a set or whatever. You would never pick up a gun. You treat every gun like it's loaded.
Okay, so you're just outwardly a gun supporter. You don't write a member of Gun Owners of America without saying that, so I'm not outing you by any means here.
No. Yeah.
One thing that's always puzzled me, once again, not a lawyer, don't talk to lawyers, make it a plan not to talk to lawyers too often.
Yeah, I know, right?
Is this on the clock? What? No. So, did you follow the Kyle Rittenhouse trial at all?
I did somewhat, yeah.
Okay. I mean, I didn't think I was going to follow it, and then I just got obsessed. And I think I got obsessed because, not that I could see myself being him in the sense of what he did. It's just like, you're an idiot. He was an idiot 19-year-old, right? But I could see 17-year-old. That's right, 17-year-old. But I could see guys like me getting prosecuted for things that are bullshit. And one of the interesting things was the trial occurs. It's right before the closing arguments, and there is a motion by the defense to remove the illegal firearm, basically that. A dispute that it's shorter than 16 inches, which has been deemed by the authorities. You can't have a firearm, you can't have a rifle that's below 16-inch barrel, 20-inch total length, right? So this is the argument. This is a motion in front of the court. It's right before closing. So the trial is pretty much concluded at this point. And the judge asked the prosecutor, do you dispute that the firearm's barrel is 16 inches or greater and the total length is 20 inches? And they said, no, Judge, we do not dispute that. And he goes, charge dismissed. And I go, wait a second. They've been charging him with something they knew was not correct this whole time. I'm still as damn dumbfounded by this. When is there retribution for something like that? How's this system supposed to work when the prosecutor can just literally charge you for something they know is immaterially incorrect or materially incorrect?
prosecutors and judges have a high level of immunity. I mean, prosecutors, when this has gone up on litigation, I mean, prosecutors almost have total immunity. And this is why, with your county attorneys and stuff, this is why it's important to have prosecutors who are mature, and also because that has the power to ruin somebody with a signature.
100%.
More than a judge.
There's a clip of Kamala Harris saying that, right?
Yeah.
That said, with the stroke of a pen, I can charge someone with a crime, even if it's a minimal crime, and then they'll have to hire an attorney, and they'll have to, they'll get in trouble with their community. It might go on the paper and all these things that I can just dismiss it a day later.
Do you want to opine on former DA Kamala Harris, not on the candidacy of Kamala Harris?
I don't know enough about her being.
I was trying to get you on that one there.
Yeah, I'm not supposed. I don't know enough. I'm not a California lawyer. I don't know enough about her conduct for that. But I do know that with the prosecutors, because I have, I think I'm 3-0 in criminal jury trials in Dakota County. Those guys charge out some nonsense there.
Yeah.
And if you have people that bring those nonsense charges, well, that's where Roach was charged.
Yeah, Roach was on here.
And
we talked
about
that.
I didn't even have to try that case. I'm not counting.
I think I know if I ever need a criminal defense attorney, I know where to go.
I'm not counting Roach down there. That case that got dismissed before trial, but if you bring, they can lose cases if people stand up to them, but also filtering out people that have the mental capacity to filter it out. And some of the best work I think that prosecutors probably do, good prosecutors, is the cases they don't bring. That aren't strong enough for them to bring, and not to bring for various reasons. And because a bad prosecutor can really cause people a lot of problems.
All right, before we let you go, make the case to potential voters. I'm imagining we have a ton of people in our audience that are in the 10th Judicial Circuit. You can go online, I'm sure, a Judicial District, and they can look and see if they're there. But it's on the back of the ballot, so a lot of people got to actually flip that thing over and they'll see your name.
So I'll give you my little spiel. I've made over 2,000 calls to people I call. My name is Nathan Hansen, Hansen. I'm running for District Court Judge in the 10th Judicial District, which is Washington, Anoka, Pine, Isanti, Chisago, Sherburne, Kennebec, and Wright. I'm running against a Tim Walz appointed judge. I have the Republican recommendation from the Republican Party of Minnesota for this seat. If you live in one of those counties, or you have a friend that does, if you can spread the word, this is going to be a close election. This one may be close. Mine will be the ultimate test, I think, as to whether or not applying a party endorsement, which is, we didn't get into it today, but this was a battle fought in Minnesota, whether or not you can do this. And it's really never been applied in the way that I'm applying it in this race. Because this is a red district. This is probably plus 15 red. Mm-hmm. And so if our people can show out, we should have the right to pick our judges. It's a partisan governor picking judges. I know they say there's a committee and all this stuff, but right. At the end of the day, there is a partisan person making the appointments. I'm not accusing of everybody being partisan, but it is a partisan person who makes the selection. And so there's no reason why we have the judicial elections in the Constitution. There's no reason why in the districts where we can, or where anybody wants to, if it was a bright, whatever district of any belief, if people wanted to get together and support a candidate for judge, that we can't do that. And so I just appreciate everybody's support. I've had a lot of support from a lot of people, including a lot of lawyers and private lawyers, challenging judge lawyers, but I've got a lot of private support among people who call me. So. And the BPOUs and stuff, the Republicans people in my areas have been awesome.
And so you're on the back of the ballot, so people got to flip that thing over.
Flip over the ballot, vote Nathan Hansen.
And they see incumbent on there, which is crazy. It's unbelievable. So he's not going to be the incumbent, but his opponent will actually have incumbent behind it. Yeah. It's also rare. I think it's rare because I think the numbers show that most of them run unopposed.
Yeah,
so it's
most do by custom in Minnesota, and that's a whole other story and the subject of potentially a lot of discussion as to why that is.
Yeah, well, I appreciate coming on and sharing the story. And usually I say let's have you back after you win, but I'm sure when you win, you probably don't do media like this anymore because
I could come on closer to the election date.
That might work. Yeah, because you don't want to tarnish your chance of ruling.
Well, there's other things that you could talk about. This stuff generally, just the whole law of how the judicial elections is set up, is really an interesting subject in and of itself.
Cool. Well, thanks very much, Nathan.
And your website is Hansen.
HansenforJudge.com. Hansen, Hansen, the number 4, judge.com.
Razzle Dazzle
Twitter,
says,
Nathan M. Hansen.
Yep.
Razzle Dazzle says, Judge, 10th District, Court 3 on ballot. There you go. You have my vote, Nathan, says Razzle Dazzle. We got you recommended, says Brad Ganser.
Thank you, Brad.
So there you go.
I know what this
Lots
is
of people.
about. Love Minnesota says, don't go with Robert Gerhardt to Lumpy's Casino Bar. And Scuba McSalty, whoever that is, says, watch out for Ryan around in the restroom at the casino.
God.
I've been looking at those comments wondering what they mean, but I had to get them out there.
Well, we're going to bring on Mike Wiener, who's a member of the Republican House minority. Hopefully that becomes majority, because we can't have a one-sided government in the state of Minnesota. Not that Republicans solve all the answers, it's just the fact that we know what the trifecta is like. This part of the show is brought to you by our good friends at John Galt Mortgage Company. They are people that think like you and me. Their social media pages, top notch. They're still long on Facebook, but they are on all social media. And if you are looking to buy a home, you got to find, I'm guessing unless you pay in cash, you're probably looking for someone to finance that home. Give the good guys at John Galt Mortgage Company a chance at financing at home. Go to johngaltmortgage.com. They're actually licensed in so many states now, I can't even keep count of it. It seems like a new state every week. But they are from western Minnesota, the Chermak brothers. So these are good patriots, good local boys, and they're running a damn good company. By the way, they've already started and run a very successful real estate marketing company called the Platform Marketing. So this is the second company they've launched, and they use it as a way to promote the Liberty ideals, which is obviously embedded in the name, John Galt Mortgage Company. Mike Wiener, welcome to the show. I think this is the first time I've had you on the show. Have you been in the studio before? Have you done another show on?
I've never done another show here.
Gotcha. All right. Well, welcome. I think you were telling me Mike wanted to come on because you heard our segment last week on the HRCC, and you had some things to say about that.
Well, my name was invoked.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
His name was invoked several times. He gets a chance to respond, right?
No, it was kind of funny that day. After the recording, I had text and phone calls and people asking questions and so forth. And I said, well, maybe the best way to do this is to come on your show and just explain my experience. And you know, Walter Hudson brought up some points and stuff. But I think my experience is a lot different.
So let's explain to people. The HRCC is the House Republican Campaign Committee.
Yes.
Having Walter on the show, one of the things that was really interesting, because Walter also is a freshman legislator, came in same class as you, although I would say Walter's been way more political over the years because he obviously he's been around the block. He was on radio for a while. That's just so funny. Nathan, you didn't have to crawl. Nathan's coming on set to get his phone and literally has to crawl. He thinks he's going to be on camera. This is a hang. Even if you came on the show, I would have ran with it. You know, it's so funny. I wish I had that on video. He's being so respectful.
I almost got my phone out to record it, but I'm eating wings here.
Good seeing you, Nathan. Oh, that's the best thing about, like, you know, if we're just regular media, we would just keep looking at the camera, ignore the thing. I'm like, oh no, I got to time him out on this one. That was so funny.
That was
By
great.
the way,
I thought I had a stalker coming up to attack me.
yeah,
or
did
something.
you think, like,
Yeah, there was
seriously?
a noise, and all of a sudden a gentleman is crawling at me.
Not so covertly. He was in a suit, so it didn't seem that threatening. Holy crap, that was funny. The things that happen on this show. HRCC is a campaign committee. Walter even seemed a little confused by this, but it's not actually the caucus. So you become a legislator, you join a caucus, or you decide if you're going to join a caucus. There's two main caucuses right now in the legislature. You got the Democrat and the Republican caucus. Somewhere in there is a campaign committee, and by rule, they can only have one per party per body of the legislature. So the Senate has two, Democrats and Republicans have each one, and then the House has a Democrat and a Republican one, and you can't have any other ones, and they're actually political party units. But from our vantage point, there is no rules, there's no governance. It's just loosely defined, and because it's loosely defined, as we've seen in this election cycle and your election cycle, they will go after candidates that are more grassroots focused, and they're spending big donor and special interest and lobbyist money to try to take out these grassroots candidates. Am I getting any of this wrong?
Well, you know, you mentioned Walter and his experience and so forth. And yes, he's been around the political system for a lot longer than I have. Really, I got involved because COVID was a big part of it, and my dad, he used to give me grief. I would complain about stuff, and he'd always say, you can't complain too much if you don't get involved. So the last election, before the last presidential election, I started going to the BPOU meetings and learning about what was going on, and almost left at one point in time because I just saw there was no action, there was nothing getting done. Decided not to, stuck around, ended up becoming active in the BPOU, became vice chair, learned about what was happening in Morrison County. That's how I got to know Nate Wiesenberg. So long before he even planned on running for office, I got to know Nate. And I just wanted to have more voice in what was going on. For those of you who don't know, my wife and I have 9 kids together, and I am just scared of what's going to happen to the future, their possibilities, if I didn't get involved. So I said, we're watching the redistricting, and kind of assuming that there was candidates in different areas. And when we got district to an area that had no sitting representative, John Poston and Ron Crecia shared our county.
Yeah.
So I was on if I was on my property, if I walked across the road, then I was in Poston's area. So I was right on the line. And with redistricting, neither of those were in the new area. So I looked at my wife and I said, I think I'm going to run for office. She goes, are you serious? I said, as a heart attack. She goes, what's your chance of winning? I said, not a hope in heck. I really just wanted to get involved, learn the process, and, figure out how things worked. So my experience then was getting list of delegates, which was very challenging. I thought that, when we have people who get involved, they would be kind of welcomed. Let's bring people in. Let's make this experience that we want to build up the Republican Party in the state of Minnesota. We want new people to come in, and maybe there's going to be different viewpoints on stuff, but nobody really asked me, what's your viewpoints? It was instantly, we're not going to give you delegate lists. And we struggled before the endorsing convention. I got one list right away from one county, but most of them I didn't get until just a week or two before the endorsing convention. So the cards are stacked against me. And I thought, okay, I'm learning
So people
a lot.
understand, like, an endorsing convention is made up of people who become delegates on the caucus. Usually caucus is sometime in February. Conventions are usually March, April at the latest.
Right.
So in order to, try to win the Republican endorsement, you have got to get a delegate list. Otherwise, you don't know the audience. And so I think what you're articulating is one of the tools used against grassroots guys is they want to run. They say, I want to be a candidate. The Republican Party should be giving them delegate lists so they know who they're going against. In this case, they don't give you a list, and you would imagine your opponent is getting it. This happened at a great level at the 7th Congressional District, where Steve Boyd was never given a delegate list, and Michelle Fischbach was. It's like, well, boy, ain't that a great advantage?
Yeah, so I think we may want to touch on it later. I've talked with Mike a number of times that there is a movement. There's definitely legislators and party staffers and others that want to try to do away with the endorsement process, go to a primary. But right now, while there's an endorsement process, if the grassroots people who tend to be conservative, just like the same with primaries, if they actually learn, which is much harder to get the word out to the full audience primary votes, but when people, especially these people that go to caucus, become delegates, when they talk to the actual candidates and they learn there's 3 people running, it's like, oh, one of them's been a politician for a long time. This other guy, he and his wife have 9 kids. He's run a successful business, supported his family, the type of guy that our founders would dream of to be a representative. They're going to pick them. And so they're going to try to disadvantage them, not give them the list, not give them access. We got a rumble rant. His wife, Mike's, has her hands wrapped around him. Huh?
What? That doesn't make sense.
I don't,
Not right now.
not at the moment.
He's not in the room right now. What does that mean? Well, you better do another rumble rant to
Yeah,
correct.
we're going to need to clarify. That $5 didn't really get the point across. All right.
Well, I guess my point of explaining some of this is just to give a little bit of history and background. I haven't been around a lot as long as others have, but my experience, and I don't know if this is normal or not, but so I get through the endorsing convention, get the 60%, and I'm primaried. Okay. As soon as I got the endorsement, I did.
You were going up against the same guy that primaried you, or was it a different guy? I honestly can't remember at this
You
point.
beat him in the endorsement, right?
I beat him in the
Yeah, okay.
endorsement, and he went to primary. So I had gotten a phone call from a member of the steering committee, introduced himself.
Wait, you know who's on the steering committee?
Well, I didn't even know what the steering committee was. at that time.
HRCC steering committee we're talking about?
I know that's a joke.
So I had gotten a phone call and introduced himself a few words and basically said, well, are you Action for Liberty? And I said, well, that's what I've been labeled as, but I don't even know what Action for Liberty was. So that explains how green I was in politics when I came into this. I didn't hear back. Well, I guess there was one phone call after that a couple weeks later, but I didn't hear back from the steering committee until 2 weeks before the general election. And then I was the same person asked me the question, or called and said, "Is there anything we can do to help you?"
Do you know? Do you remember who this guy was?
I do.
You do? You don't want to out this person?
I mean, I don't know why they would ask if there's anything they could do to help you. Literally, I'm sure.
That was the point.
I'm sure you know that they had weekly Zoom meetings, right? And
At that time, I didn't.
Well,
And
but
I'll-
I mean,
and
now
I'll
you do.
explain.
Like I was on there, right? I was on these Zoom meetings. There's great candidates like Wendy Phillips and Stephen Swoboda who were endorsed, right? And they got to be invited to the Zoom meetings. Every once in a while, I'd jump on these Zoom meetings, and I'd always see Bob Lunan, Sheldon Monson, like Bishofsky's opponent and Pam Altendorf's opponent. They were all on these Zoom meetings, right, on Monday. So if somebody called and said, "How can we help?" they literally had your opponent on their weekly Zoom meetings every freaking week. So that's completely disingenuous.
Right,
But
so I'm
anyways, yes.
giving you this information to just give you the background of my experience.
Yep.
And 2 weeks before the election, that person called me back and said, "Do you need any help? Can we do anything to help you win?" I said, "This is an odd phone call."
Before the general
We're
election
2
or
weeks before
primary?
before the general.
And you didn't have a Democrat opponent. Come on, this is
Well, I had an independent.
Yeah,
he was listed as, but
so
I said, "This is an odd phone call."
Yeah, so essentially what you're saying here is this person wanted to see you fail, even though you're the Republican endorsed candidate.
Well,
That's what you're alluding to here.
once again, if we're going to win this state,
Yeah.
do we do that by pushing people out?
Well, of course not, right? But that's what you're alluding to is this person did not embrace you, you're the Republican endorsed candidate, didn't want to help you, right?
Well, they fought you the
I would
entire
say that's
primary.
Okay,
I
so
would say that's an
what I
accurate
don't understand is
depiction.
why wouldn't you say who that is? Because this is a public official. This is a state representative. I presume someone who's still there.
I believe discretion is up to me, and if I choose to say don't say that name, I'll say that.
I mean, I trust what you're saying is correct. I just feel like we'll never solve these problems when these people live in darkness. And that's kind of part of what we do on the show is expose these people because they're going to continue doing these tactics until they get exposed. They hate the light. So anyhow, we got a failed candidate.
Phil Kennedy, give us the damn
There he
name.
goes. He reiterates my point. Give us the damn name. Well, now the people want it too.
Yeah,
So-
Phil Kennedy also says have Walter come back with the names in the steering committee. So, and Phil Kennedy says Heinzman.
Well, that's what my thoughts are. It's probably Josh Heinzman, but I could think of a ton of
we
different
do
people
have
that would be
to
that.
definitely we'll touch on before this ends here. Something I alluded to with Walter mentioned, but we have to figure out the way to move forward, whether it's naming a name or not. It's like there has to be something that needs to be done, and whether it's like I know Walter, others might say, well, we got to win this election. Okay, that's fine. We got to win the majority, but the caucus is going to meet within days of the election, probably happening, right? So whether there's a majority or a minority, whatever happens, there's got to be a plan in place by November 6th or whatever, by the time the caucus meets, because if there's no plan and the same leadership is elected, the type of leadership someone we can't even name, but they do these corrupt things, people aren't going to trust it anymore, and it's going to be really bad for Republicans.
Well, you got to be
until that
nuts to
happens.
trust it at this point. I mean, they've shown
Exactly,
us their
and that's
cards.
what I know. It's something we might get to later, but that's what happened with our conversation with Walter. He kind of laughed about it a little bit. I mean, I know he probably took it somewhat seriously. We said, I look forward to a spirited debate with my competition, as if somebody runs against him because he gives money to the HRCC or something. And it's humorous, but I mean, at the same time, if there's people across the state that say, look, got no issue with how Walter votes. I got no issue with Walter's great speech in the House floor. What I have issue with is we're going to continue to lose elections to Democrats, and we have very, very minimal resources. They spend seven times, outspend a 7-1 or 30-1 or whatever it is, and we can't spend half of our money against Republicans. And until somebody has the balls, has the guts to stand up and say, you know what, we're not going to let these people. Because we know who they are. Mike knows who they are. Walter knows some of who they are. And Walter admitted on the show, he said, yes, we don't want to spend money in red districts against endorsed candidates. So, okay, we all agree. So if people stand up and make sure we elect new people and not the people that make phone calls 2 weeks before the election, then we can solve it that way. And short of that, everybody's going to have to get a primary challenger until until it gets solved.
You get a primary charge. You get a primary
anybody
charge.
that doesn't stand up, the people that are standing up for the grassroots, they say we want to win and we don't support spending money in red districts and against endorsed candidates, then you don't get a primary challenge.
All right, so Mike,
going back to that,
Yeah,
I
go
guess
back.
the reason for not saying a name, I have a reason for not doing that. And, will I at some point in time? Yes, I'm sure I will. At the same point, I want to bring up the story because
bring up
I want
the
to give a little bit of background of my experience. Now, you go through the whole process, you win the primary or the endorsement, then the primary, and then the general election, and now what happens? So there's a training that goes on for new members, and you end up going after the general election to an HRCC meeting. And you walk in there that first day as a new member who has been excluded from everything. And there's elections that take place.
Okay, hold on. You attended an HRCC meeting or a caucus meeting?
HRCC, well, a leader of the, caucus, because we choose leadership.
Are you a member of the HRCC?
Well, you are by being elected.
Are there bylaws?
That's a good question because I've actually requested, what is our Constitution bylaws? And the reason I question that is because I look at the system or what we're doing right now, and I say, we have some problems here. We really do. Mm-hmm. And I saw this election cycle, some of the same things that are coming up. And I'll invoke Jimmy Gordon's name.
Yep, very good.
Jimmy Gordon was an endorsed candidate. And I said, we should be bringing the endorsed candidates into caucus. I don't want to see a single candidate go through what I had to go through. We don't build a team. We don't bring people together by tearing other people down. So how do we make this system better? Mm-hmm. So I invited him in, talked to other candidates that had got the endorsement. And truth be told, even me coming on this show right now, I'm going to get attacked for just being on here.
Yeah. So dangerous. It's so dangerous to have a conversation, right?
To have an open conversation. I can talk with Democrats, I can talk with liberals, but if I come on this show,
anyone who doesn't come on the Truth Hurts because primary challenger.
We laugh about how David Hand won't even come on our show, won't discuss anything with us publicly, and meanwhile he does podcasts with the Democrat chair. It's like, wait a second, shouldn't you be coming in? What is the fear you have of talking to people that literally could be in your base, that the people that you should be bringing in? The grassroots is pissed off. They can't fundraise amongst the grassroots, and there's a reason for that, which is problematic when it comes to HRCC, because when you look at their books, they're getting wealthy donors, lobbyists, and special interests, and they're then bundling that money and putting it towards these races. So you don't know right now, as a matter of fact, if a bylaws or a constitution exists for the HRCC.
I have requested it, and I have not been given anything.
And then you requested it with, I assume, caucus leadership, because are you aware of who's the HRCC leadership? Because it is its own legal entity.
It is its own. It's what what I've been told is it's considered an affiliate group.
It's not an affiliate group. It's actually a political party unit. It's a special status.
Rumble ran here. Carol Hexum says, "Is there a plan to abolish the caucus?"
Well, caucus is a different thing, and many people can caucus. The HRCC has this very specific legal ability. They can actually coordinate with candidates. They can get $50, or actually now it's $75 back. Donors can get $75 back when they donate to the political party unit. They're subservient to the actual MNGOP, just like every BPOU and Congressional District is, because they fall under the umbrella. They're not just an affiliate. They're actually a political party unit. And every political party unit that I am aware of has very distinct leadership, bylaws, and a constitution. And somehow now I've had two supposed members of the HRCC on the show in 2 weeks, and they don't know of any bylaws or constitution.
Well, to be fair, Mike's been asking for it for 2 years.
No. I know he knows I'm being fair. It's it's unbelievable. And then meanwhile, they spend against the Republican endorsed candidates.
Brad Ganser says, "I appreciate Mike's courage to come on and talk about the hypocrisy in our party. It's been happening for many years." Razzle Dazzle agrees with you, Jake. The people need to know more about this HRCC. Get Jesse on it. Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. We might ignore that one for a while. A little too much graphic homosexuality. Let's see here. Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. Heinzman and Utke went straight to primary, and Moore tells you they don't care about the people. Bill Danksman, is the unnamed individual who called you currently being sued for voter intimidation and election interference?
So let's go back to talking about I look at this, and the numbers were brought up before. And
Yeah.
this, I like numbers. I say people can confuse the heck out of me, but numbers make sense. And you brought this up because when the Democrats can outspend us $7, $8, $9 to $1.
Yep.
And I went through and I looked at every candidate that had a primary in the House 2 years ago, and I add up all those numbers, and the outside money that I could find were well over $1 million. $1.3 million, I think, is what I came up with. And somebody else had said there's probably like $1.7 million. How much of an effect would that had on swing districts, on races we could have won? So the logic and the strategy here makes no sense to me. We are spending all of this money, all of this time, fighting amongst ourselves and losing this state. I would love to win this state back and retire.
Yeah.
I would love to go back to hunting and fishing, raising my kids, sitting out on the patio in the morning with a cup of coffee, watching the cows, and thinking that our state is in good hands. But when we're fighting amongst ourselves like this, we can do better. And that's my problem. So you've got military experience. How does it work when the enlisted men are fighting? I mean, isn't there rules against this?
When you say they're fighting amongst themselves, or what do you mean by that?
Well, most of the military conduct, you can't fight, physical, fist fight, to a certain extent, right? We don't want conflict in the.
You're saying enlisted men fighting amongst themselves, like in a unit?
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, I mean,
Okay.
if it got to a point where it was assault, there's the Uniform Code of Military Justice that would deal with it, but otherwise, yeah.
Sure, and the reason for that is when you got conflict between people inside of a group, it creates larger issues.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Well, yeah, and I think this morale is going to exist. Looks like we have a rumble right here. Let's
Another
do that
rumble
real quick.
Y'all just let Rep Wiener tell his story and not pressure him for names, please. Love Minnesota.
Yeah, it's fair, calling you out. I mean, I guess I don't feel like...
understand that.
Bill didn't
like
ask
I
for a
said.
name. He just asked if he was currently under investigation for voter intimidation. And
Oh, she's saying that let Representative Wiener tell his
Yeah.
story. I thought you were reading it like, oh, come on, you're not pressuring him hard enough. No, that's what I
no.
am. I'm not going to go in. In fact, I pretty much guess who it is. I bet it is that Oompa Loompa. Wink. No. No, I mean, I do. There's going to be fights internal in the party. That's okay. That's natural. To me, oh, geez. Okay, go ahead. Rumble Ramp.
Rummelrand, if Mike can add, he would be better suited as the chair of education rather than Ron, who doesn't know the difference between endorsement and rating.
Insider baseball on that one.
That is referring to, I guess, a hearing that I think happened, was it 2 days ago on Tuesday? There was a hearing. Apparently, it's still there. This is still on. It's he had a hearing because of claiming false endorsements. It's still being investigated under 211B complaints.
Yeah, because I think Ron Krisha cheated to get
Yeah,
reelected,
well,
and I
he
think
did,
when
yep.
you look at 18 people voting a different way, sending out a mass mailer, 6,000 households, saying that you're the endorsed Republican candidate when you're not, seems to be cheating that probably changed the election.
So, yeah,
just like burying the Hunter Biden story, right?
So Tuesday-
or 51 intelligence officials saying it's Russian disinformation.
Yep.
These kind of things, when it's a close race, make a massive difference.
It took every bit. I mean, all the HRCC mailer after mailer after mailer saying things like Ron Krisha is the only conservative in the race. I mean, I don't know what standard we hold these people to, but the folks that come up with this, Heinzman and company, to say Ron Krisha is the only conservative, and that's a lie.
Well, it's subjective, but
it's not really.
It's subjective. Well, yeah, I agree, but it's subjective in the sense that what does a conservative mean? I have a very simple definition: is you don't believe in big government. So when you vote for all these unconstitutional omnibus bills, how can you look at me in the face and say you're a conservative?
How can you say that any way that Ron's more conservative than Diane, let alone the only?
Well, because
conservative
Diane's
in the race?
untested, so it's subjective, right? You're making a subjective choice.
It'd be pretty difficult to claim that
She
she's
could
the
be.
only
Well, it wouldn't be the
conservative
first
in the
time
race.
someone gets. I'm not shitting on Diane by any
Yeah.
means. I'm just saying, the point I'm trying to make is these are natural arguments that will happen inside the party. It seems to me that's what the endorsement process
Well,
is supposed
anybody
to be.
that sees that though knows that that's dishonest.
And it sounds like what you're calling for, Mike,
It's
which I think is fair, is if someone wins an endorsement, then stay the hell out of this race. Because if you're spending $1.3 million, that's probably the difference of Tom DePel winning in Senate District 41 and the trifecta is not installed by the Democrat Party. Because, I mean, $1.3 million would have been very influential in that election.
Even if they just didn't spend so much, big portion of that was spent against him anyway.
Yeah, I didn't just mean that. I mean, just
But yeah.
you're spending $1.3 million, you know, and
That is a lot of money. And like I said, when your opponent, when the Democrats can outspend us 7-8 to 1, $9 to 1, every penny we're spending fighting amongst ourselves
yeah.
is a penny we're not spending against the Democrats. So, and it's not just the money. You know, when you're out in a primary, and my district is extremely red. It's 75% Republican, 76%. So if I have to go out and door knock, if I have to go out and send flyers, mailers, if I have to be on the radio, which I love doing the radio anyways, but I should be helping another district. And this is something I started promoting the first year, is adopt a rep.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems pretty simple to me. St. Cloud is an area that we should flip. We can flip.
Mm-hmm.
Any district around there should adopt that rep candidate, whoever gets endorsed, help them by door knocking, you know, mailers or whatever we can do. To go
Mailers,
down
you
there
mean like develop a mail plan prior to mid-September?
Well, maybe I shouldn't say mailers. We can go down there and door knock.
I mean,
we can go help
surely
put up
the
signs.
HRCC had developed a mail plan for prior to mid-September, right? Right?
There's one of those races that we should have been focusing on rather than focusing on primaries.
Right.
And if we have staff door knocking in a primary race for Ron Krisha or Brian Johnson or somebody else, that's time that they're not spending door knocking in an area that we can flip.
Right.
So you're taking valuable resources in an area that's heavy red and not spending it on time in an area that we can flip.
Okay, so to your knowledge, and you are a state representative, you are in the Republican caucus. It's question marks if you're in the HRCC. Who's making these decisions?
Well, you know, and that came up at when Walter was talking as well. And it was said that there was a vote on that. I do not recall a vote on that. And now, if there's rules and bylaws, and like you're saying, a political entity, I think you called it, or political party, the HRCC is, well, then isn't there also minutes?
You would think so. You would think there'd be a secretary of minutes. Seems to be every BPOU does that, right?
So I thought about that after talking to Walter, is we should just request the minutes then to find out if that vote was taken.
Yeah.
I do not recall a vote taking place. And as a matter of fact, I've talked to some other legislators and said, do you remember this? And nobody that I've talked to yet remembers
Well,
that.
I think on the show, Walter even say that he didn't recall a vote.
He didn't. He said maybe it happened.
What I know what the reference was to is that Representative Schultz he attended something that the Morrison County Republicans put on the week before the election, and some people were rightfully upset and giving him the business about why is the HRCC spending money. I think specifically there's Dan Schilling, I think, said, like, I had 4 mailers for Krisha in my mailbox on Saturday. 2 of them were from the HRCC. 3 text messages in the last 24 hours. People hit unsubscribe, and they're still getting the text messages from the HRCC. Can't open up Facebook without seeing the ads. Why are we spending these thousands and tens of thousands of dollars for Ron when he's not endorsed? And then Representative Schultz said,
and they're getting mailed at the special rate because of the Republican Party of Minnesota, which, by the way, don't they have to follow the rules of the Republican Party of Minnesota? Rhetorical question, Mike.
HRCC should
because it's
follow
like
them too.
there's no HRCC rules, so how would we know, right?
But they asked him, about why are we doing this? Why are we spending money in red districts? We should be trying to defeat Democrats. And Representative Schultz said, well, we voted on this 2 years ago, and I agree with this, that we need to protect the incumbents because we're the ones in there fighting in the trenches. So we decided this 2 years ago, we're going to protect the incumbents. Well, I don't know who has decided. I mean, I know Isaac's in leadership. So if we take him at his word and there was some vote somewhere in some smoke-filled back room or possibly not smoke-filled back room, whatever, that people voted on this. I mean, I know when I asked Lisa Namath face-to-face at State Central in December, this last December, are we going to spend money again? I hear we're not going. I wanted to let you look me in the eye and tell me we're not spending money against Republicans in these red districts and against endorsed candidates. And we're going to save that money and spend it against Democrats. And she looked me in the eye and said, yes. Well, was she a part of this vote that Isaac is referencing? Did the vote happen? Like, who voted? Who made this vote?
Well, and you would imagine she is, but this is the thing. It just seems so obvious to me. What's happened is you have a political party unit of the MNGOP that's been hijacked by just a few insiders.
But Isaac
and then this is
Clinton,
what
we
we
should
said
have
with
him on the
Walter.
show.
Walter said, yeah, sure. Walter said there's no establishment, or he had those in tweets, maybe backed off of that. But it's like, isn't that the establishment? A couple few people not talking to the people that are supposedly donating, right? Because a lot of you guys donate into the HRCC and act as if you guys are all part of this thing, but they're not, and they're making these decisions on your behalf. That's
Well,
like,
I think-
imagine that happened in every BPOU. People would be up in arms about this stuff.
So you bring up the BPOUs, and that was really the next point, or where I would like to go with this next is our BPOU handbooks. If you go look at them, most of them say you're supposed to support the endorsed candidate.
Yep.
That's part of the process. That was part of the issue that happened up in Otter Tail. They didn't support the endorsed candidate. You got delegates that got kicked out for that premise. Our state party has has guidelines in there for supporting the endorsed candidate. So now if you have aspects that are not supporting the endorsed candidate, causes distrust, right? All of a sudden we have an issue because who's following the rules here and who doesn't? And then that every society has to have a sense of justice. And if we're not being treated the same as someone else, or if certain candidates are getting, help and others aren't, there's a sense of injustice, and that trickles down. If we ever want to win this state, I feel like there's conversations being taken place now that we have to get rid of the endorsement and go straight to primary, which I think is a really horrible idea.
That was Carol's question.
If we ever want to win this state back, we actually have to support and build up our grassroots. We have to get that activism, because look at the Democrat Party. They do a very good job of invigorating their base. Right?
And then just subsequently ignoring them.
Yeah, exactly.
We still want you, Bernie supporters, but he can't do it. Just
So
they're so interesting, and it's amazing. It's amazing how many of them don't call them out. But I'd be like, we're here with less infractions, still major infractions, but less than the Democrats, and we're calling the bullshit out. It's like we're the rank and file in the Democrat Party calling this bullshit out.
So I look at what was happening now with Trump's campaign in the state of Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
I firmly believe that Minnesota was at play, and that's why they had to have Walz as the VP pick, because they needed a few criteria. They needed a few identities. They probably wanted a white Midwestern governor. He's also very socialist, so he fits in with their agenda. But I would think they were afraid of Minnesota going red.
Yeah.
I think they were very much afraid of that. So now when the Trump campaign comes in and they say we have to put this structure into place to help this candidate, and any of our statewide candidates, we have to have this structure in place. That's the BPOUs. Mm-hmm. That's the grassroots.
Right.
I think we do need to do a better job with our vetting. I think we have to have criteria, say half dozen different criteria points rather than open-ended questions, and explain to the delegates what it takes. We need to educate as well. This is what it takes to win a statewide race. We're not just in greater Minnesota, the viewpoints are going to be different than in the metro. We have suburban candidates that are different than just 30 miles away. We have to look at a bigger picture, and we also have to say, with anything else, you have criteria, you have things that you look at. Let's educate the delegates. Let's get candidates that we can win in statewide races, and then let's utilize those BPOUs and that grassroots to fire people up. Mm-hmm. The Trump campaign right now is saying, go get your 10, 25 signs and you talk to these people who are low propensity voters. Well, if you're a BPOU chair, captain, any of the members there, you're known in your community. Mm-hmm. As somebody who's political. You're going to have your Trump signs out in front of your yard. You're going to be active, and people are going to come and ask you questions. That's what we need to build up in this state. I think we could flip this state if we simply start working together. Now, is there going to be confrontation? Is there going to be differences of opinion? Absolutely.
Yeah, it can happen. So what? We move on, right?
Exactly.
We got to respect the process. We got to respect, the people that are coming in, and we can't just root them out. And I think that's what you make a great point on, is it does seem to be very much stacked against the little man, so to speak.
Well,
and
I talked to
it's
somebody.
Well, that's not a way to build a party up.
Right. I talked to somebody just the other day who would be at the opposite end of the spectrum when it comes to Republican viewpoints. They view themselves as Republican, are going to run as a Republican, but in my backyard, they would be a Democrat. you know, but also says we need to win with statewide races. Now, can we sit down and have a discussion? Absolutely. Do we disagree? Sure we do. But it's kind of like I would compare Colin Peterson's race against Michelle Fischbach. Peterson was well liked out in that area. He was on the ag committee. Farmers voted for him. Even though they were conservative, he was Democrat. You had to take a step, and we flipped that. They had tried with other candidates before Michelle Fischbach who were more conservative, but it wasn't enough to win that over. In this state, we have to get together. We have to support those candidates. We've got to, I think we need to improve how we endorse candidates, educate those delegates if we're ever going to have a chance to win the state back. Does it start at the bottom? I think it does.
All right, so let me evoke your dad's philosophy here for a second.
Sure.
Mike, you bring up some really good issues. What are you going to do about it?
Well, that's part of why I'm here.
Okay, what are you going to do about it?
So
You're a state rep. It's not like we're just talking to some guy off the street here. You do.
So I do a podcast now. We talk about not just politics, but traditional family values, a little bit of everything. We need to connect with the younger voters, younger people in our state. We tend to lean towards a certain demographic, and we need to start pulling young people in. I get enthused every time we do an event, and we see 18 to 25-year-olds there. It's almost unheard of. So the other thing, I think that's huge, reaching voters where they are. The podcast is something I'm doing. Spending time in the metro. Because if we don't have a long-term plan of winning in the metro, at least building something there, we're going to keep losing. And if that's time, we went down and interviewed 4 different candidates down in the metro who in very tough races. Very tough. And they're going to have a struggle, uphill struggle. But if we don't start making inroads in the metro, that's a long-term goal that we have to start doing. You have to start laying that groundwork. That's the grassroots.
I guess
That's
my
something that I
question is
work
more
on.
specific towards because that's just general strategy and how Republicans can win statewide or turn out the vote more. But you see a problem. HRCC, we've discussed this in length. What are you going to do about this? I mean, obviously you're not fine with the way things are going. Your personal experience and what you saw this election cycle, you are maybe a member of the HRCC, unknown at this point, but definitely a state representative. You're in the Republican caucus. What are you going to do to fix this?
Thanks for putting me on the spot. And I think, okay,
well,
so
it's fair. Maybe you don't have the answer yet, but I think it's fair
let's
if you
take a
get back
couple
to us on it.
examples of what I have done. I invited Jimmy Gordon in. I talked to those endorsed candidates and said, come on in. And I caught a lot of heck for that. Just having him in to the Capitol ruffled some feathers.
Like you come in the caucus room, stuff like that to me.
Taking a picture with Gary Stewart ruffled some feathers. He's an endorsed Republican candidate, wanted to take a picture. So does that cause problems? Simply asking for the rules and the bylaws. Yeah.
How long
Am I
ago did
doing
you ask
things?
for those?
It was towards the end of last session. Well, and actually that had to do with
Or was it 2023 session?
Well, so it was a while ago.
it was a while ago.
Who did you direct that to?
Leadership.
So Lisa Damuth, I'm assuming we're talking about here then.
Well, actually I asked from Wagner.
Oh, Andrew Wagner, so a staffer. And so essentially you've asked for it in a period of time and have no follow-up from them.
I have yet to get a copy of the rules.
Have you
bylaws,
gone back and asked
Constitution.
for it again just in case they have forgotten the request?
I think I've asked for it twice now.
Okay. Have you asked then why you haven't received it?
Well, truth be told, I've requested a lot of information that I have not gotten. A simple one.
So
I'd asked
if
after
you
the-
request information and you don't get it and you don't do anything about it, you see how nothing will ever change?
Well, because you haven't seen me asking for stuff and requesting stuff and doing stuff doesn't mean it's not getting done either.
Okay, so you do have a belief that it's getting done then.
I hope that enough pressure and continuing pressure will make change.
And when you ask or make this request, do they give you the belief that it exists?
Well, a prime example would be after the endorsements, and I asked for a simple list of the endorsed Republican candidates across the state. I wanted to reach out to as many as I could just to talk to them.
We could find that on the Republicans' website.
I understand.
How about the bylaws and the Constitution of the HRCC? Have you been given the impression it exists?
Actually, I was told from an old legislator, because I sought more information, an ex-legislator, that they do exist.
Okay.
And that was
But when
not
you
too
asked
long
the
ago,
staffer, I mean, that person gave you the belief
that there was no rules or bylaws.
Oh, so wait a second. So they gave you that impression?
That was the impression I got. Because if I broke some rule by inviting an
So you essentially did get the answer to your question then, that it doesn't exist. You were asking for something
that was
that
the
doesn't-
impression that I got, yes. That was what I was basically told. When I started asking other legislators if we have rules and bylaws, and some of them said, well, you got a copy of it. I have yet to get that from anybody.
Okay, so it seems like a
legislator,
valid course of action for you here then.
well, first
would
you got to
be
find out if there is something.
Well,
that
no, it sounds
exists
like
out
you
there.
just concluded that they're not. I think we can read between the lines that they don't exist. I think the valid question or valid course of action for you,
Where do you
guys.
I don't think that's
Do you
accurate.
believe they exist?
I believe they exist. I'm sure they
you
exist.
do?
I mean, the Minnesota State Constitution exists, right? Tim Walz does what he wants. He shuts down businesses. He closed down churches. It doesn't mean the Constitution doesn't exist. It means nobody had the balls to say, Tim Walz, we're not going to let you run roughshod over our rules, and we're going to demand that you follow the Constitution. And so what we need,
We
just like,
know, but
just
we
like
can point
Tim
to
Walz
it.
did whatever he wanted.
Yeah, but we can
to
point to it. I have never seen these things. I can find
I'm
the
sure
Minnesota Republican Party
I'm
Constitution.
sure they exist. They exist, and they don't get followed. And so I think first people step up and, like Mike, ask for them, and they get pushed aside. And they'll push people aside.
Yeah, but
even
hold
if
on. They
people start
exist, but where? Like, you say they exist. Are they in the locked box in the bottom
They
dungeon
might be
of
in-
the Capitol? Like,
Josh Heinzman and Lisa's desk, and maybe
so
Heinzman
it's
and-
only exists in a physical
and
copy.
Isaac Schultz probably all have a little binder with the rules and bylaws. No, I mean they very well might. Jake, I mean, why not? Why wouldn't Heinzman and Dameth and Schultz have a little binder that has all the rules and all the people that are doing this stuff?
Because I actually don't believe there are rules, because there really is no need for rules. It's just a handful of people that take over this powerful position and use
But
it.
if it's a political party,
There's
it
rules,
still
they
has
just
to be
might not be
structured like a
followed.
corporation,
Correct. Yes.
doesn't it?
Yes.
Okay, so then there
And
has
so
to be
you
rules.
are asking, you were having a reasonable request. You just said to me, you don't believe. You got the impression from the staffer that they don't exist.
Right. That might not, well, just because they gave me that impression does not necessarily mean they don't exist.
Okay, so
then the other thing I'll say.
So
and
then
I-
you would
I
just go
talked
find
to-
someone that knows a little bit better than the staffer.
So I asked recently a legislator who has retired for some time about rules, bylaws, Constitution. They said, yes, they exist. Because at one time they were looking at changing them and the verbiage on some of those rules and bylaws. I said, oh, that's interesting. So now I have to go back and find out for sure what are rules, bylaws, where they're written, where they're kept, who has them.
We'd love to have you on the show and discuss that when you do that, because from our vantage point, they don't exist. We haven't seen them yet. No one's seen. We've had
I know
no.
you're down to about 12 minutes left, so we got so much that we could be discussing. We definitely should have on your show again when you come figure that out. But I guess my thing is, I know that you have said more emphatically than Walter did. You know, we got to stop this. And I was talking with senators in the past after they spent $1 million or whatever SVF, you know, against DePel and cost us a Senate majority. And you know, there is a majority of senators that claim to be against doing that, right? Not only just Wiesenberg and Liskey, but you know, Lucero and Barr and Drazkowski and Gruenhagen and stuff. They all say that we shouldn't do that, right? So there are 17 out of the 33, which is a majority of senators, say we got to stop doing this. But they won't stand up because they have a literal majority, but they won't stand up and demand it, even though they're in the majority. And I know that you've said, Walter said, oh, we're changing minds. We got all these freshmen. We're starting, and that's great. I mean, it is a great step. But somehow we have to do it quickly before we get to another cycle of the same thing. How do we organize those people and have the majority? Because I think the majority would be with you and Walter in that position to say that we got to stop this. So how do we stop it?
Well, and these are good questions, but let's be honest. I've only been around politics for 2 years. I couldn't tell you what the HRCC was or did, 2 years ago. When we went in to elect officers and they talked about the exec committee, I said, I don't know what that is. I had never been involved with anything. I hadn't been included in any conversations. So why haven't I done anything? I've been here 2 years, and I've probably asked more questions than other sitting representatives have.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's time to get answers now, right?
Well, exactly. And
Yeah.
that's fine. I think, yes, I think things are moving. I think we have a long ways to go. Absolutely. I'm going to be outspoken about these things. I want to know if I have broken an unwritten rule, which I was told I did by inviting an endorsed candidate in. Well, I said, if it's an unwritten rule, it needs to be written down.
Yeah.
Because I did not break a rule then. I broke somebody's feelings maybe.
Right.
But those candidates, we have to make this experience with our BPOUs, with new candidates, all this stuff, a much more welcoming experience. Whether our viewpoints are the same or not, we have to talk about those things. But when we automatically push people away, when we label them, we're going to keep losing the state. We're just going to create more division, more problems by treating people the way I was treated. So have I tried to do better? Yes, I have.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, has that changed some people's opinion in the caucus? I hope so.
Mm-hmm.
But coming on here today, like I said, opening up myself for another set of attacks just by being on your show, which is fine.
Walter actually said, I didn't really get much flack for coming on the show. But, I think people realize that having a conversation is actually a pretty good thing,
Well,
it's so dangerous to do that nowadays. Like, whatever.
I appreciate coming on and getting a chance to voice my opinion on this. Because
Yeah.
we need to do better.
We absolutely do. And I just think if it's a political party unit, they should be following some set of rules, and they shouldn't be working against endorsed candidate, And I think you are making a great point. Walter made this point, too. If it's $1.3 million that was blown in these safe Republican districts of all, I think everyone was a safe Republican district other than maybe McNew and Bonehead. Then
That one's
yes,
going to be a tight race.
that's a tight race. Yeah, but all these Republican red districts like Cretia's, it's like that's a waste of money.
There was two primaries that were not absolute safe districts. One is Pulowski's district, and the other one was Bonehead.
Yeah, Johnson. Yeah,
But the other ones that there was primaries were all either safe or safe Republican or safe Democrat. But the Pulowski one was also, it's also a swing district.
yeah.
Obviously.
I really wonder which way that's going. I have no good read on it. Well, thanks for coming on, Mike. We appreciate it very much, making the trip down to the cities. I know you're up from greater Minnesota, the better part of the state.
God's country. It's beautiful up there.
It really is God's country, Trump country. All right,
if we can get more answers, as soon as he gets more answers for us,
we'll bring you back on. Yeah, I want some more answers on this stuff.
I think definitely, and not to, I don't want to dismiss anything about like what you've done, because you're saying, you're in there trying to get answers. I know I've been talking with you since you got elected, right? So, trying to ask for bylaws, ask for this, find the powers that be are trying to recruit candidates and push candidates for endorsement over other ones and all these kinds of things. You've been trying to speak up for the grassroots, right? And I know that, but I think in the next, even if we spend the next 5 weeks trying to just win a majority, if at all possible, after what they've done, within days of the election, we have to have some kind of a plan, I think, to hold them accountable. Because what I said to Walter is people are not going to believe it again, right? They're not, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. And people 2 years ago wanted to challenge Roger Scraba and Danny Nadeau and Myers and all these people because Jeff Whitty, because they say they're rhinos. And I and many others shared the exact same thing that Walter and what the HRCC's vision is supposed to be, which is to win a majority. He said, look, if we primary these things with conservative, Scrabble won by 13 votes, we'll probably lose the seat. Even if somebody beats him in a primary, they lose the general, or one of them loses, or whatever. So let's just we'll let the conservatives come out of 10A and in places like that, and then.
Well, let me say this, and this is something else that I think should be changed, because after November 5th, after the election, the caucus gets together and decides leadership. I think there's a flaw in that.
Oh yeah.
Last year, or 2 years ago rather, 25 new freshmen who don't know hardly any of the senior legislators, and now you're expected to decide who's going to be the leadership. I think there at least needs to be a week or two where we sit down and
very reasonable request on that
meet
one,
the
Mike.
people who want to be in leadership.
Yep.
So we get to know them. Now we're going to have
perhaps
another
it's
batch.
by design that they don't do it that way. I guess in the end of the day, Doubt pissed off so many people that it didn't matter. He wasn't going to keep a hold on his leadership position.
I mean, theoretically, leadership could be changed at any time.
yeah.
Theoretically,
True.
I mean, it's literally. I know I'm on CD2. We got a full committee vote again on Tuesday, right? There's vote every single month. Should we endorse Joe Tayrab? Every single month it fails. But there's every single month though there's a new vote. There's something. I mean, it's not like you guys are a caucus. You can vote anytime to kick out your leadership. I mean, you can vote to kick out members if you want.
Well,
you can do any number of
Tushy, speaking of Joe Tayrab, we do need to move on to our next segment so we can get this in. Thank
Okay.
you very
All
much,
right.
Mike Wiener, Mr. Liberty Longwind, prolonging our show more than necessary, but we will bring you back when we get a chance, when we get some more answers, Mike.
Sure.
This is an Alpha News story. We actually, Tush and I were chatting about this 2 weeks ago, so I'm glad that they wrote the story. Go ahead and pull up the C1 there, Dawson. This is this gentleman right here. Let's see here. Thomas, what is his name?
Tom
Thomas
Bowman.
Tom Bowman. The man in the nice looking hat. I love that hat. Running against Angie Craig and the actually, I think Thomas Bowman is technically a carpetbagger himself, lives outside of the district, Congressional District 2, which isn't a requirement when you are running for U.S. Congress. But Thomas Bowman
Thomas Bowman, just like Angie Craig and Joe Tayrab, doesn't live in CD2.
where's Angie Craig live?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, she
Just
used to live
DC,
in
you're saying?
She used to live in Egan, then she went over to Prior Lake, but then she moved because of threats. Remember, she was
Yeah, I remember that.
intimidation.
So
and
no
stuff.
one knows where she lives right now,
I heard Woodbury. I don't know, but
which is not CD2.
there's the southern portion of Woodbury that doesn't have very many houses.
Oh, so you're saying, yeah, that's funny because Woodbury actually goes out in those cornfield areas and it's growing. I don't even recognize Woodbury in many regards. Haven't lived there in like 9 years or something like that. Okay, so this is what happened. This gentleman, Thomas Bowman, was recruited by Democrat operatives. It's actually kind of funny in my estimation because it's not like this doesn't happen on the opposite side as well. But the level of transparency on this one, because the FEC filings just clearly show that this guy was supported by Democrat operatives. So they get him to run as a constitutional conservative, which will be labeled on the ballot as such. They recruit. I don't know how they recruited. Do you have any special wisdom on how they recruited him? That you can't say.
Yeah. He
Secret.
was
Should we do it in the post show?
Yeah.
Post show. Okay,
yeah,
post show. Leave it for the post show.
Subscribe
All right.
today.
There you go. Subscribe today. Get the insider because Tushi was on this case many weeks ago. Anyhow, they get him to file for office. He's 71 years old as a constitutional conservative. Would you say he is a conservative? Like this is authentic?
Yep. Yes,
Okay,
he
so
is
he's authentically a constitutional conservative. Over the next 10 days, Bowman, who has no history of seeking elected office, received 6 max donations, which is $3,300 from out-of-state donors. Now, every single one of those donations came from Democrat operatives, and essentially what we can tell they did is they have a big network of Democrat donors who donate the max. So what is it? 3,300 times 6.
Yep.
Oh, Jake, come on, quick math. 19,180 or something like that. 19,800. 19,800. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Look at that. How about that? Is it really?
Yep.
Okay, good. I'm glad. All right, so I'm really second guessing myself, but $19,800.
3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 18,000 plus 1,800, 19,000.
Yes,
See?
score. You know, when you have children and they're learning math, it's good that you actually know math. So good. All right. So $19,800, and essentially that money then gets bundled into door knocking operations to pay, your door operatives.
Wow. Do you have any inside information that this was door knocking?
Oh, what, did we not know that? Or could have gone petition at like a game or something like that.
No idea how a petition.
Well, whatever. They probably hiring operatives to go get these signatures. What is it? 1,500 signatures or 1,000?
1,000
signatures to put them on
signatures, which
on the
means
ballot.
1,500. You
technically they have a trifecta. So it was the
They had
Democrats.
the
that did.
trifecta. However, David Hand was publicly, supported screwing over the pot party.
That's why I was
So
thinking about it
he
like
was-
as both. But
he
yes,
literally
obviously.
did like joint press releases.
Correct.
I think a press conference or whatever, some kind of a show or something with Ken Martin, and they agreed wholeheartedly that they should crush third parties.
Correct. Yeah. So anyhow, they bundle this money and they get this guy on the ballot.
So,
So,
when you say bundle the money, and you also mentioned that he got $19,800 of max donations. Just to be clear, I don't believe that he ever saw a dime of this money under his own control. I think that basically they, from what I'm just going by the FEC report, it looks like they gave this money. It's in-kind contributions.
Yes.
In other words, they probably hired the canvassers themselves.
okay, go ahead, Dawson. Go ahead and pull up the FEC report. This is the C2. So this shows the individual contributions. Scroll down just a little bit. You can see where it says 19,800. And then you'll see the six people that gave it: George Snelling, Joe Fox, Richard Thompson, Joseph Groves, Elizabeth Steinglass, and Lynn Brody. Okay, so and it shows that they gave that amount of money. If you click on it, it will even say. Well, okay, so you see that they're actually not from Minnesota, right? Not a single one of them. Now, if you go back to the main page and then you scroll down to expenditures, so we were looking at total contributions, and then you look at where total go back one screen.
It's loading.
Yeah. Okay, scroll down now. You'll see disbursements and operating expenditures, and it just happens to be the same amount. And so what that's showing is, and then you can click on one of the names here. Yeah, I'm a little bit ahead of you. Yeah, just click on that first name, and you'll see like George Snelling. You see on the right, I'm in the way on the window. Keep going down. It'll even say in kind right there. It says description in kind. So an in kind donation gets put on both sides of the ledger as a receipt or a contribution, and then a disbursement. So, yeah, you're right. They end up just funneling this money.
He's not the first candidate in CD2 that had a large number of in-kind contributions with no real cash to be spoken.
Matt Erickson, that's right.
Indeed.
Preacher services and all.
Spiritual advisement.
Spiritual advisement. Sometimes it's amazing politics is free.
That was a brilliant operation. I wonder if if Matt had anyone who told him that he could make a report that listed hundreds of thousands of dollars of contributions, leak the numbers, have the press go with it, and then only later when the full schedule, after like another 10 days, when the schedule, if you filed the last day, it finally comes out a week later, and the press has already ran with it that he raised $250,000, and there's nobody understands what an in-kind contribution is anyway. So they're just like, newcomer Matt Erickson's been raised for less than a month. He's already raised $250,000. It's all like spiritual advisement and in-kind contributions of max amounts.
Tuesday, before I go to the last story, your political insights here. Do you believe that the Republicans will win CD2, and how much of an impact does this make?
I don't think there's a chance. I've said, I don't think there's a snowball's chance in hell that the Republicans candidate Joe Taylor will win CD2. I mean, it's John. John Kahn was the last one to win a majority in CD2 and there was redistricting also in 2022, but in 2016, Donald Trump got between 47 and 48% in the old CD2, and Jason Lewis also got between 47 and 48% in the old CD2. And the only reason that Lewis won in 2016 was that Paula Overby got 8% of the vote. Had some great campaign advisors.
Pot party pot party candidate, right?
And independent in 2016.
Oh, independent.
But,
okay.
Had some great strategists helping her out. So got 8%.
More of that in the post show.
8% of the vote, and so that's how Lewis won. 8% taking votes. This was a transgender candidate, former Democrat State Central Committee member that took far more votes from Angie Craig, campaigned in the most, like in Northfield and stuff like this, and took these votes. I mean, it was very strategic. And so this is exactly what Tayrab's complaining about, exactly what Alpha News wrote this article about and stuff. It's like, when when somebody else does it, when the other side does it, it's brilliant. So in other words, when Paula Overby ran in 2016, got 8% of the vote, campaigned, knocked doors in Northfield as a transgender, woman, right, to knock doors in Northfield and take votes from the Democrats, from Angie, and gets 8% of the votes, so Lewis can win with 48%. It's brilliant. It's less than 48%. It's a brilliant operation. And then, when the Democrats do the same thing, some Democrats do the same exact thing. It's guerrilla warfare. This is unacceptable. It is guerrilla warfare. And I think it's a big brain move. You know what I mean? I
think the difference here, though, is they allege that Bowman did not realize he was being a patsy here, that he was being taken advantage of. We'll give you that insight on the post show. Okay. You can click on join. Right. And then you could be a subscriber to our show, and that way you'll actually get the access to what Tucci may know in some of his investigative research. Let's go last.
To finish your question, though, and I'm thinking Angie. I'm thinking what do they say? Carpet muncher over carpetbagger by 10 points. If that's allowed, if I can say that on live show.
That should have been in the post show. Whatever. Okay.
So yeah, that's the prediction here. But literally, it'll be 10 points, and Bowman probably will get 3%, something like that. But I mean, if Angie wins by 10 points, that means she will win by more than the margin of victory. I don't think Bowman's votes are going to make the difference. What Bowman could have done for the Democrats is, if there was a pot party candidate or some other candidate, a third party candidate to take votes from the left, Bowman could have balanced that out by taking votes from the right. But since there is not, like I said, Trump got less than 48% in 16, less than 48% in 20. Republican candidates, the same, didn't even get a majority of votes. Now the district is slightly less Republican, ever so slightly. So I mean, it's not a Republican district. He won't win it, especially with a third party candidate.
Last story here on truthhurtsnews.com. You can go check out truthhurtsnews.com. I haven't been that great on posting lately articles. I got to get back into my writing on a daily basis. So here we go. I started writing the last 2 days. Also figured let's, because I know we have a lot of people on Facebook, so we wanted to start putting some money behind Facebook again. Wrote an article yesterday. You can go check it out on Truth Hurts News about why I think Donald Trump's actually the front runner right now. Because, if you're watching the mainstream media, Trump lost a debate. She's going to surge. She's winning the national polls, all this stuff. And I'm like, let's read between the lines. Okay, I could be wrong, but it's an opinion piece, and it's a valid opinion piece because I got some very good reasons why I believe that. So I wrote that article down there yesterday. You can check that out. But we go on to Facebook to promote the article to our audience because, when you put on social media, you just get organic traffic and you can spend some money. You can boost something so that your audience gets it, maybe 3 or 4 times on their screen. So they're more likely to actually get the material that you're sending to them. And so that's what we did. We wanted to boost this article. And we had also boosted our show on Tuesday. It was probably within 5 minutes of me boosting that article that all of a sudden my whole ad account got shut down. And all that we know, if you go to scroll down here, Dawson, it said we restricted your ad account, which means we can't create or run ads. You can't use or share audiences. We can't use a pixel. We basically can't even boost posts anymore. And the reason it happened, as they say, is misleading business practices. Misleading business practices. I went in and looked at their policy, and it seems like it was written, and for many really good reasons, written for like scam groups, people that are trying to defraud with like a product, say this product does X and it really doesn't do it, right? Or they say, this celebrity promotes this product and they really don't, and it's just like you're selling t-shirts that anyone could sell. So Facebook's trying to stop that. So that's the policy they're quoting on what anyone would recognize as an opinion piece by a news organization. Now, I thought it was just an algorithm that said that, but it turns out it looked like, at least they say it was reviewed by an actual human being. And this is a scary thing that we always worry about, is that when you think about the people that are in tech, they don't go right, they go more on the left side. And in that case, we actually have someone's eyeballs looking at something that happens to be pro-Trump and saying, this thing violates community standards or violates the policy on advertising on Facebook. And here we are again, another election cycle. Facebook seems to want to do what they did in the past, election interference. Now, let's just hope and pray that they they had one person do it the wrong way, so they did have a review request, and so I did do the review. It says 4 days, so we'll find out. Is there some sanity there? But at this point, it's like everything I'm sure CNN doesn't have their stuff taken down when they have an opinion piece on how bad Trump is, right? Or how Kamala's the savior, the next best thing for this country. So are we allowed to actually have an opinion news piece on the Facebook platform?
You know, Mark
Be very
Zuckerberg, I'll just take the moment, Mark, to apologize to you for uttering the hateful term carpet muncher on this show. I hope that you'll forgive us and give us our Facebook access back. Thank you.
There you go. All right, we're going to do the post show. We got some, I guess I would say it is pretty juicy gossip here when it comes to the Bowman race and a couple other things here. Join us by clicking on join on our Rumble page, $8 a month. Subscribers get the inside look of the things that we know that are going on at the Capitol or in the political circles. That's why I have guys like Tushy and Jesse on the show. These guys know. They know where the skeletons are. That's the greatest part. And maybe my thoughts on our conversation with Mike and Nathan. I think we could do that too. So anyhow, we'll be on the post show in 1 minute. For everyone else, we'll be back here on Tuesday with another great show. Take care.